All right, we are live. Hi, everybody. It is so good to have all of you guys here and actually talk face to face and not just like type over social media or messages and stuff. It is so nice to meet all of you.
Likewise. Thank you,
Absolutely,
Kat, for inviting
likewise.
me.
Be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Oh, it's good to see everybody who's tuning in. We are live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter today, and we are here with Sky, Sommers, Madam Crystal Butterfly, Rosalyn Briar, and Astrid V.J. to talk about fairy tale retellings and what we write and what is coming in 2022 because there's a lot of book news in 2022. And if you're joining and you haven't watched our other videos in the series, which you can go back and watch in the recordings on YouTube, we are all indie authors. Some of us are hybrid authors at different videos, but everybody here has self published some books, and we're excited just to support each other and talk about what's going on in the world of indie books. So, for the sake of everybody watching, why don't we just go around clockwise? So, Sky, you can go first, and I'll go last. Sky, and then Madam Crystal Butterfly, and all the way around. And just tell everybody who's watching a little bit about yourselves.
Okay, well, I'll go first. I'm a fairy tales author, although I recently started writing PNR romance as well, and I have some friendship fiction books as well under my belt. I live in Estonia, in Tallinn, so kind of a Russian Estonian mongrel. And Astrid speaks many more languages than I do. Um, I mostly write fairy tales, but at the same time, it's not my day job. My day job is something completely different. Like I'm sure quite all of us have different day jobs, and it's quite interesting because you don't see, but it's dark outside for me while it's still daylight for you, um, and I'm really excited to be here. So. Um, bring those questions. But meanwhile, handing over to Madam Crystal.
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
great
thank-
point. If you have questions as people are talking, please drop them in the chat. There's a little bit of a delay between when you put a question when we see it. So if you comment and it takes a few seconds, it's like a 10-second delay. So we're not ignoring you. It's just taking a bit to get to us. So welcome, Madam Crystal Butterfly, to the live as well. I love your
Hello.
mask.
I know I love the math too. It was a good to see you become a math author. But hello, everyone. I am Madam Crystal Butterfly. I am a YouTuber, author, and book reviewer. And I really got into, well, I really have always had a great love of books. And I've always been really excited since I've gotten into being a writer about being able to tell people all kinds of interesting stories and putting a spin and making sure to give everybody a nice little surprise. Okay, you can pass it on to the next person.
All right. Astrid, you are up. It's so good to have you back. I think you are the only person on this call that I have actually spoken to before over anything virtual.
Hi, thank you. And yes, it's been great to be here again. Uh, so, for those who don't know me, I'm Astrid. I grew up in South Africa. I've been writing for a very long time, and one of the things I write is fairy tale retellings. Specifically, I focus on retelling lesser known tales to bring them back into popular consciousness. And so I have quite a few out and more coming.
Wonderful.
Yay. And Rosalind.
Rosalyn Briar. And so I've written a couple books that are based on fairy tale retelling. And I mostly the Grimm fairy branched out a little bit here and there. Yeah, I also love fairy tales. My two books that are out are The Crown of Bones, which is it kind of encompasses about 20 or so of the Grimm's fairy tales into one. And then my other book is A Sea of Pearls and Leaves, which is a retelling of the Three Snake Leaves.
Nice. And I'm sorry, I'm going on mute so that you guys don't hear me clacking while I'm dropping links. For those of you who are watching, I'm dropping the Instagram links for these amazing authors in the chat so you can click on them and follow them if you're not already. They all have great, great content to share, from book reviews to book news and everything in between. So, and I'm Katherine D. Graham. I'm a fantasy author. I write various subgenres of fantasy, and I'm just now branching out into the fairy tale retellings with Starfire Express, which for me won't come out till next year, but it's a huge, huge amount of fun. Um, I have one debut novel that is out right now, and it is an epic fantasy with elves and dwarves and all of that, and a slice of romance and court intrigue on the side called The Vow That Twisted Fate. And I'm so excited just to be here with everybody, especially since you guys are all so well accomplished. We've got award-winning authors and public figures with the YouTubes and bestsellers all on this live. So I'm really curious to hear what's going on in 2022. Rosalyn, we're going to start with you and sort of go around backwards. But what's in the cards for 2022?
All right. Well, one thing that you already know about, but not everyone might, is that I'm also part of the Realm of Darkness anthology. So my book coming out, that is going to be, it's called The Mermaid and the Pearl, and it is a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but I also like to pitch it as kind of blended with Corpse Bride. And so it's, I don't know, I'm really excited about it. There's this undersea circus and, yeah, an undead mermaid. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. And then I guess the other thing that's going on with me right now is that while I'm working on that book for the set, I'm also querying a novel that is it's more of an origin story about the wicked fairy. So I'm querying that right now, see how that goes. And actually, I plan to query it throughout the rest of the year. So that'll kind of, my goal is querying that year until I, reach the goal. But yeah, that's me. Can't hear what everybody.
Well, I know that there's a lot of authors, because we did about 20 at the beginning of this month. Several said that this year they are considering going hybrid, where they still plan to self-publish, but they're also querying. And so before we moved on, I just had a brief question for you, is what is making you consider shifting into also doing hybrid, like querying too?
That is a I still will be, I will still self-publish some works. I have another novel that I'm working on that's going to be self-published. And so I just wanted to give querying a try. And I think the novel has a good commercial hook. I think it fits well with some other titles that have been out in the traditional publishing world in the past year or so. And so I just thought I'd give it a try. I think I just want to see what could be next for my career. So I've got my self-published works. I've kind of got, I've got I'll be part of this Realm of Darkness box set. And so big things are happening this year. And I just thought, all right, I'm going to set my sights even bigger. So I just want to really pursue my dreams and see where it can go.
It's really exciting. Well, wish you so much luck with it. And Astrid, what's going on with you in 2022? You released a lot of stuff last year between the box set and your novels.
I definitely did, yes. This year is a little bit less, but it's still quite a bit. I have a lot of catching up to do since like I mentioned, I started writing when I was very young. I was 12, but I only started publishing 3 years ago. So I have lots of book ideas that have been sitting either in my head or on my computer for a very long time. And they just want to get out there. This year, my main focus is on my non-fairy tales series, although the Word Mage's Tales are technically invented fairy tales. So I am sure that I can talk about them today.
They are.
So that's the main focus for the next few months, is going to be 3 of the Word Mage's Tales. The first of which is coming out in 3 weeks' time. It's called Warring Lions, and I'm really excited for this one. It's something that's been stewing for about 15 years. And so I'm really excited about that one.
I just
And
read that one as a beta read, and it was fantastic. I truly suggest that people try and read it.
thank you, Sky. And then the
I'm
other
so excited.
thing that's fairy tale related is my short story, which is coming out in the Enchanted Forests charity anthology. This is an anthology of short fantasy stories. It's fully illustrated with some amazing work by Eleanor Celeste. And all proceeds of Enchanted Forests are going to the Rainforest Foundation to support their work in forest conservation. And my short story there is an origin story for the Tinderbox,
Oh
explaining
wow.
how the Tinderbox came into being, and is a brief sort of introduction to some of the characters who are going to feature in my Tinderbox retelling called Jahara's Choice, which I'm hoping to publish in 2023.
Wow. So a lot of writing for you this year. A lot of writing.
Definitely, definitely a lot of writing.
Wow. So do you write and edit simultaneously? I mean, you must have to be able to get it
Um,
all done.
Pretty much, I tend to be writing one project and editing another at around
Wow.
about the same time. Yeah.
And I know we've got people on. Becca Burge says, "Hi, everyone." Hey, Becca.
Oh my God.
Becca is another indie author, and she'll be on one of the other lives this weekend, so coming up tomorrow. So, Madame Crystal Butterfly, why don't you tell us what you've got coming in 2022? Because you've already got some amazing books up on Amazon, including the Curse of the Frog Prince, which is just really, it's a really good read.
Thank you. What I have coming up 2022 is a big old stack of work I've given myself. I have completed the second installment of my Curse of the Frog Prince. I currently have it in editing. Thank you.
Yay!
And I'm really going to get started on one of the key things with Curse of Frog Prince, because Curse of Frog Prince is an introduction really to the bigger overall alternative fantasy series I'm working on called the Butterfly Tales. So I'm going to be working this year to get more of the Butterfly's Tales complete. Combined with, I'm launching my next book series, Realms, which involves fairies and all kinds of magic. And
Oh,
I'm also trying to get my vampire story called The Vampire Problem complete. So those are the books I'm focusing on trying to get done this year.
well, yay. So, a lot of writing. So, we've got Rosalind, who's like writing, editing, publishing, querying. We got Astrid, who's writing and publishing. And then you've got your tons and tons of writing and publishing with a lot going on, too. How about you, Sky? Tell us what you got going on because you always have so much going on. I'm just blown away at how you manage it all.
Well, I think Astrid beats me to it, but she's a great role model for me. This year, I think it will be two short stories and two full books. And one full book, Rosalind already mentioned, because I'm also in the same anthology that she is in, Realm of Darkness. And my story there, hers is about the mermaid, and mine will be about a goddess of fate, actually. So she will be teaming up with not quite a fallen angel, but he has some things he needs to atone for, some atrocious decisions. So they will be glitzing it up in Moscow and getting into ridiculous situations. And my forte, the insanely fun dialogues, including about Botox and face control in Moscow, nightclubs, for instance. And at the same time as that book comes out, I'm trying to start and to actually kick off the whole Goddesses series. And I was planning just today, I was planning a series of 10 books from the Goddesses series. And the second one, I decided to shift around instead of the Goddess of Luck to be the Goddess of Death. So I hope that one gets written this year as well. And the short stories, the Goddess of Death. Why the Goddess of Death is because at the moment in April, another anthology is coming out, which is the Once Upon a Name anthology, and my short story in that anthology of 20 authors is rather bloodthirsty. So it's kind of like a Kill Bill with an angel / frog sidekick. I have a thing for frogs, I must admit. That's the fairy tale heritage coming through.
Don't worry, you're not the only one with a frog thing going on.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, I think Crystal also has a penchant for frog princes in particular. And kind of my fellow authors told me that what I wrote for Once Upon a Name was completely out of whack with my all other fairy tale stories. And Elena, the one who is illustrating Enchanted Forests, where my story is also in, she told me that no, you have to rewrite this. This is just too gory. This is horrible. You have to rewrite this more fairy tale. So I tried to rewrite this in a more fairy tale fashion, and I told her to go and read it, and she was just like, "You just made me reread all the gory bits, didn't you?" But inspired from that is the Goddess of Death story. So actually, they're all interlinked, and Astrid knows she's read quite a few of them. Quite a few of my fairy tales are interlinked, and most of my books are as well. And besides that, the Enchanted Forest story with Astrid, and that one is To Snare a Prince. And that one is about a dragon, sadly, not about a frog. But there's a raccoon in there, which has some lines.
The raccoon is utterly brilliant. I love that story, and the illustrations for it are spot on.
I know Elena just did the illustrations, and these are fab. She's a multi-talent. She's not on here, but she's a multi-talent, and she can write, she can edit, she can draw, and we're like, you have a day job, so that's fun. And I don't know, maybe with Astrid one more story, but that just remains to be seen because that's steampunk and completely not fairy tale at all. But we'll see. We can't hear you, Kat. You're on mute.
Sorry. So a lot of writing across the board this year.
Yeah.
And I'm right there with you guys. I learned a very valuable lesson last year, which was the downtime I had while my book was being edited. I should have been writing like another book instead of going, oh, how do I stand waiting? Let me go on Instagram. Okay, no. If you're a writer out there, learn from my mistakes. Write during your edits. So this year I'm catching up big time. I'm working on a book for the Realm of Darkness set, which both Sky and Rosalyn are in. And mine is going to be a dark fantasy romance. And it follows a vampire elf prince and a demon king and a hybrid human princess who doesn't know that she's part angel, part demon, part human, part elf. So it's going to be a little interesting to release because that's been one of my trunk projects. I wrote it back in high school, and now I'm revising it and getting it ready for the world. And but as far as the fairy tale retelling, I'm also writing Starfire Express, and it's just a totally different tone. It's a portal adventure fantasy with some fairy tale elements thrown in, and I don't have frogs now, and I feel sort of sad after they came up, but I do have a kappa from sort of the Japanese heritage side, which is sort of like a turtle-esque being. They come and eat naughty little children, and unless you feed them cucumbers, they'll come after your toes and stuff for being cheeky. So
That's close enough.
You know about the frogs, since Crystal is already writing about frogs, and so am I, and I'm sure Astrid can as well, and Rosalyn, come on, you have to be on board, because we will make you a challenge, Kat. We will make you a challenge to write a story about frogs, because you know how the Once Upon a Name anthology got started. We were all fooling around with a name generator. We got the names out of the name generator, and we started writing stories with those names. So challenges, and the steampunk story that came out of an Instagram challenge with Astrid and I. So you're challenged now to write about a frog.
I'll have to write a story about a frog, and people can subscribe to YouTube, and maybe I'll drop little hints through the year. Here's how my frog story is going in honor of this live chat, and spurred off by Madam Crystal Butterfly and Sky and Astrid.
Ironically, my frog story actually started because I was throwing a fit in my mind about how I need to not be working on too many books. Suddenly, the story just popped in my head, and I was like, dog dang it, I gotta write this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of my books start that way too. It's I get a dream or something, and I have to write it. I can't not write it anymore. All right. So we got a couple of questions that I saved from before the live, and if you're watching live and you have additional questions, you can contribute those as well. But the first one is, how spicy is the romance if you have romance in your fairy tale retelling? And I think that's a good distinction. Not all fairy tale retellings have romance, but a lot of them seem to. So how spicy is your books, ladies?
I may have some stuff.
Mine aren't generally. Mine are clean and sweet, but I do tackle social issues which have trigger warnings with them. So, for instance, like miscarriages, abortions, those kinds of things. So, but generally, I prefer writing fade to black. I cringe when I read, and I cringe when I have to write something truly spicy. So that's not me.
It's a bit the opposite. Mine gets a little spicy. It was kind of interesting to write because it's about a mermaid. But
Yeah, with mermaids, I always wonder.
yeah, so it's a little spicy, but I do love exploring, especially a couple books. Like they talk through things because they're different, and also there's a lot of consent. So it makes it sweet, though it's a bit spicy.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you, Astrid? What are we looking at with spice from yours?
My fairy tales are on a line because, yes, sex exists, sex happens, my characters have relationships. And in some books, it's necessary to talk about that, and in others, not so much. So in Gisela's Passion, for example, which is a retelling of Giselle, I have it here, this one.
It's so pretty.
Because the original tale, the Slavic folk tale that this is based on, makes it quite clear that the ghosts, the Wileys, at the end of the story, are fallen women who committed suicide because they were no longer socially acceptable because of their fallen state. In that particular social setting, it was a necessary element for Gisela to lose her virginity in some way. And so that was a crucial plot device and is hence described in the book. While my other stories tend to be clean, but I obviously don't know what things are going to pan out in future stories.
Yeah.
And definitely, I mean, in the brother and sister retelling as well, in Becoming, the characters, it's mentioned that they have sex, but it's a fade to black scenario, that one.
What about you, Kat?
I sort of let my characters dictate when it comes up naturally, if it comes up. So Downfall's the Queen and Downfall's the King, which is in my Splitting Worlds series, they're novellas, and they're leading up to or part of the same universe as Splitting Dawn, my book in the Realm of Darkness at. The main character, Ray, she's ace, so she's demi-ace, so she's not all that touchy-feely romantic, but there is love and admiration between them, and so there's not really anything spicy there. In Val, the relationship just sort of came on its own and ended up being a cleaner, like, it's not fade to black, but it's nondescript. And then in Splitting Dawn, it's spicy. And it's mostly about her love story with the guy she ends up marrying, and so there's a lot more in Splitting Dawn. So I just feel like it's really whatever the story calls for on its own. But yeah,
I'm
so
intrigued. Crystal said some steam. How much is some steam compared to a lot of
I'll let you rank it. How do you feel about somebody trying to have sex in a hallway? If a hooker.
Teamy.
Yeah, that's all I can tell you because I have to be careful not to reveal too many secrets. When I say some steam, I mean it gets a little spicy, but if I tell you, then it's going to blow the surprise.
So without spoilers, there's some steam to
no spoiler.
be had. Read more for details. The link's in the comments. Yeah, so we got another really good one, which is when you do a fairy tale retelling, how do you try to modernize it, or do you try to modernize it?
Oh, I think I'm going to go for first on this one.
This is sort of your field professionally too, right, Astrid?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. I'm a social anthropologist, so showing up culture and cultural difference is something that I actually really live for. What I love doing with my fairy tales is to show the difference. So, what was life like in the past? And I pick a specific era and try to stick to the cultural situations of that era. And then through what happens to the characters and the situations they find themselves in, along with some subtle commentary that puts it into our time or makes it easier for our generations to sort of understand what they were going through in that time, to then be able to actually reflect on how much has changed.
How about you, Rosalyn? I'm really curious. I haven't gotten to read yours yet, so.
I would say since I make them in their own world, I can sort of control that world. So yes, they're kind of, I would say, not as modern. They're not a modern world, but I still can make it its own world. So women, LGBTQIA characters of color, they can have the same experience everywhere. So that's what I love about having this fantasy world where I can control it. Just have a book themselves as the characters. They can enjoy the book. So I would say don't necessarily base on any exact culture from the past, but I do draw from the land or mythology of the location. I definitely love to culture where people are accepted.
Yeah, I think the poster who asked the question, they didn't specify whether they meant include modern ideas or make it a modern day world. So I'm going to assume it's modern ideas because a lot of the fairy tale retellings are still, the traditional settings. But what do you think, Madam Crystal Butterfly, about, do you modernize yours? Do you try to keep yours more like closer to the classic?
I feel like I modernized mine mostly because when I read the classic, well, the original Grimm Brothers version, that one was the only Frog Prince story I had a problem with because I felt like the princess didn't learn anything and she tried to kill the prince and yet he wanted to marry her.
Yeah.
So when I wanted to do a modern retelling, I was thinking, okay, first I want to phrase it more in the way we speak more now just to help more people relate to it. But I also want to set up with, okay, you got a princess and she meets a frog. One, the frog is talking to her. Isn't that a little weird? And I wanted to also create a different type of princess, one who, instead of being a spoiled brat, do something with more of a modern feeling, someone who's more willing to sacrifice for the people they care about. Combined with, I'm Ghanaian, so I wanted to include a lot of my Ghanaian culture into it. So I put it in a fictional African country and put in some Ghanaian traditions with it.
Nice.
Nice.
I love that. How about you, Sky?
Well, there's quite a lot of portal hopping in my books. So it's a given that people come from the modern world and go into a fairy tale magic kingdom, and then they start missing the mobile phones and TVs occasionally, but not all the time. So there's the modern world element for sure. Um, I also like to blend my fairy tales. So, for instance, I use the mirror, mirror on the wall idea in my Wizard of Oz retelling, which it's a blend. So kind of, if you think about modern ideas, then I do agree with all of you that first of all, yeah, you modernize the language, you modernize how the princesses are perceived, so not all of them are just wusses sitting around. The Shrek thing rings a bell of assume saving positions, but they do something to deserve the life that they have, and also they're a bit of badass. I like that in princesses when princesses are badass. So yeah, that kind of modern ideas that the women can actually stand up for themselves and be on a par.
I'd like to add something because I think Sky really did something fantastic with Cinder's Necessary Evil, in that Cinderella is really presented as the whiny, irritating teenager who won't do what she's told. She was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and everybody said how they hated her. That's because they didn't meet her mother yet.
Yeah.
That one takes the cake. But yeah, the Cinderella, it was a flip because I thought so. We've all read the Goody Two Shoes Cinderella of how she, slaves away and is always nice to everybody, but they just walk all over her, and then in the end she gets the prince. But what if she wasn't the Goody Two Shoes? What if she was the kind of the ugly sister type that is whingy and whiny, and in the end, does she get her prince, and how? And some realities of life, hence the theme of teen abortions and icky first time, so to say. But yeah, you'll have to read Cinders to figure out if it's an entire flip. So how about the stepmother? Is she the just strict parent, or does she have an agenda of her own?
And no spoilers. I just got mine in the mail, so I'm not there yet.
I definitely need to read that one.
Yes, it's really good. I'm at the beginning, and I was just like, whoa. Already, twist. In chapter 1, I'm like, well, that makes sense.
I love the paperback. I absolutely adore the paperback.
Yeah, I can show you. It's originally meant to be a double book, so you turn the book and you get Ella's diary on the other end. But the way that Amazon has printed it, it's consecutive. So because Amazon said that KDP doesn't allow flipped books, but funnily enough, they sent me the proofs with a flipped book. Yeah, but the one that is in paperback,
so you really
the one that
do get
is
2
out
books.
here.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I said
it's 2
beautiful
books.
when you do get the 2 books in it. And it's
just you still
great.
get the 2 books. Because I thought that, I might just as well put it into one rather than have one separate book and then people go and buy the second book separately. That's just ridiculous. But if you buy the ebook, then it's the whole story is intermeshed. So you read a chapter from the stepmother's side, and then you get bits and bobs from Ella's diary. So if you prefer to kind of keep on guessing and keep on flipping, then buy the ebook rather than the paperback. But
yeah, it's choose your own adventure. Wait till the end to see it from a different POV, or like read them at once.
Yeah.
So we got one last question, and I know we're a few minutes later than we had planned, so we'll try to make it a little short. But why fairy tale retellings? Did you do it because you didn't like the way they were originally written, or did you do it because you loved the way they were originally written?
Oh, I want to start with this one, but I'll be short, I promise.
All yours. Okay.
I started with Thumbelina, actually, because I saw holes the size of giant rats in the story. And that's why I just thought that, oh no, how couldn't she see this coming? And oh no, she didn't do this. So when you read it like 20 or 30 years down the line, you see the giant holes, and then your creativity starts filling them. So yeah, I guess I didn't like the original one, but I love all of the fairy tales, all of, permutation. So next.
You're on mute,
Okay.
Madam Crystal Butterfly. Can't hear you. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties, right?
Okay,
There we
I
go.
figured it out. It just muted me at random. But like I said, my brain was throwing a fit about not writing another book, and then I just suddenly envisioned the Curse of the Frog Prince book, and I think it was sparked because I did not really love the original Grimm Brothers version, because you have a spoiled brat crying about her toy that she could replace easily. And then later she tries to murder the frog, yet he wants to marry her anyway. And I was thinking, you know what? In that story, only the princess could break the curse. Why? They don't tell you. And then there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm thinking to myself, why does all of this happen? There's all these holes, and I'm thinking I ought to make my own spin on the story and fill these holes. And when I started doing that, I started getting all kinds of ideas for other fairy tale stories via the originals.
So we got 2 for we saw holes, but we like fairy tales. We just saw holes. How about you, Astrid? Did you write your sort of as a fan inspired? I love fairy tales, or was it more of a I don't really like how they're written right now?
It's a little bit of a detour there, because the original spark came from reading Ella Enchanted, and I both loved and hated Gail Carson Levine's book, simply because it is so well written. I loved the whole atmosphere and the style, but I hated the fact that it was yet another Cinderella retelling. And even as the years have gone by, and every year hundreds of Cinderella versions come out, and Beauty and the Beast, and what about all the other fairy tales? That was my thought. So that's kind of where I came into that angle of lesser known fairy tales. But the more I look at fairy tales and the more I work with them, the stronger I realize their transformational messages that they have embedded inside them. And since I am a transformational life coach as well, and that has been the main focus of all my writing, subconsciously I've always written about our human capacity to transform and to achieve our greatest dreams. And so actually teasing those messages out of the original fairy tales and showing that they're there is something that's become a thing for me.
And then you met Sky, and you fell in love with the Cinderella retelling.
Well, I do love her Ash more.
Yeah,
Wizard of
I
Oz
love my Ash
retelling
more
is
as
even
well.
better.
So how about you, Rosalyn? What started it for you?
I've always loved fairy tales, and but I've always been drawn to the darker parts of fairy tales. The Grimm version are very dark. People think they're meant for children, really never were. So they're quite dark and disturbing, and I just love that. Almost tiptoe the line of horror. And I also agree with Astrid that there's a lot of books. There's so many Beauty and the Beast, so many Cinderellas. I love those. I wanted for myself to write a fairy tale. So that's why I for A Sea of Pearls and Leaves, why I wanted that. The retelling of The Three Snake Leaves by the Grimm's brothers. It's a pretty dark fairy tale. So thought I could, I don't know, get it out there, make somebody, hear of this fairy tale. So I really like how so the line of horror, but yet I love to bring them into the modern world. Empower the books, stories a little more, like you all were saying. We don't want to see this, so we can kind of modernize it.
Yeah. And then I feel like for me it was more of an absence, because I am very almost sort of bicultural Japanese American, and have been interested in Japanese culture my whole life before I ever started studying, and realized there's a whole aspect of fairy tales that we're missing. So characters like Tengu and Kappa and um, just the Kitsune foxes and stuff. I was like, all of this could be really welcome in American literature. So I'm sort of, with Starfire Express, trying to blend them together just so that get more representation from other aspects of the world outside of just Grimm's tales. So there's classic, I almost want to say it's like 10th Kingdom style twists on the fantasy that we already know, but also bringing in what I love and know from the Japanese culture side too. So yeah, I love fairy tales in general. I'm sort of like you, Rosalyn. I like the dark versions, even though they're holy from time to time. But I guess that's the beauty of being an author today, is we get to put our own spin on the worlds that we see and hopefully bring some different perspective, like Sky did with her Cinderella, or like you said, Madame Crystal Butterfly. Why does the frog want to marry somebody who wants to kill him as thanks for what he did? And so, yeah, if you guys are watching and you're trying to figure out why does she, you now have a book you can go to, or you can go check out any of these authors' books to see sort of their twists on these classic fairy tales. And I have read portions of almost everybody's fairy tale retellings, and I have Rosalyn's book, but it's sitting on my bookshelf, and I have not gotten to it yet, so I'm going to have to knock it out before Realm of Darkness comes out. I got caught up in Heather Carter's last year, and I was like, there's so many. So, but yeah, thank you all so much for joining me today and for letting us go over time. And for those of you who are viewing, tomorrow morning we have a 11 a.m. Central Time live about fantasy and paranormal romance for people who want spice in their books. These are authors that write 18 plus. If you're looking for the YA side, that was already today, so that's in the recordings on YouTube, and you can watch it on Facebook and Twitter too. But I cannot tell you guys how much of a pleasure it was to be here with all of you and just to hear about your writing and your stories. You're such an inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank
and I
you.
can't wait to read your
Really
fairy
fun.
tale story this year.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, all right. So thank you all. If you have additional questions, follow us on Instagram, shoot us a message, drop us a comment, and we will try to reply back to you. That's the good thing about being indie. You're talking to real people. So, all right. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.